Please welcome the chairman of the Port of Houston.
Thank you. Thanks, Adrian. Appreciate it. Thank you. Well, I don't know about walking on water, but we do need a lot of ships to go through the water, right? I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. Whenever I'm with a crowd like this, I love the opportunity because it gives us a real opportunity to talk about what we really do and what Port of Houston is about, the Port Authority. There's a lot of confusion about what goes on at the port, and I'm going to try to fix that for you today. Whenever I talk to folks, they go, well, doesn't Port Houston control everything in the port? The answer is absolutely not. And we have our own sort of lane through the channel, if you will, and lots of other folks have their lanes as well. So what I'm going to talk about to start with is about what we really do. So when you think about Port Houston or the Port Authority or whatever you want to call our organization, we do really two things. One, we operate the public facilities, or eight public docks, which include the two container terminals, Barbers Cut and Bayport. And we operate those on behalf of the public. Anyone who wants to bring a ship in and unload something at one of our terminals, they can do that. And that's what we do, number one. Number two, we're the non-federal sponsor of the channel. And what that means is we're the steward of the channel on behalf of the federal government, because the federal government owns the channel. All waterways in America are controlled by the Coast Guard and the Corps of Engineers. And so when you think about there's an issue at the port, or issue in the channel, it's the Coast Guard, number one, running everything. We really appreciate the great job that they do. They do a really great job. The Corps of Engineers, if you want to do anything inside the channel at all, you want to dredge, you want a new dock, you want a new this or that, guess what? Corps of Engineers is involved. So the port is the non-federal sponsor, or Port Houston is a non-federal sponsor, so we integrate with those federal partners, and we help them. Now, we do have a fire department and a police department, and whenever there's an issue in the channel, we partner with those folks in addition to the local officials like Harris County, Chambers County, and all the cities in and around the port too. So I think it's really important to understand what we do and what we don't do. So when there's a challenge in the channel, guess what? We look to the Coast Guard. We help them and take care of the channel from that perspective. When you think about how it's run, we have one of our commissioners here, Commissioner Meese from Pasadena. So the Port Authority is run by or managed by the commissioners. Commissioners are appointed by various cities. Pasadena has one, Harris County has two, City of Houston has two, the area of mayors appoints another, and then the city and the county appoint the chair. So it is a collaborative group of folks. They get paid a huge amount of money, right? You got a free lunch today, right, Roy? By the way, it cost 10 grand for those two tables there, so your lunch wasn't really that cheap. So we serve, and there's no payment involved. We don't have any conflicts in the sense that we don't own real estate or do any business with the port or anything like that. And it's a service to try to improve our community. That's why we serve. That's why Commissioner Meese has served longer than I have. I've been at the port since January of 2019. I think it's my third conference with you folks here. We serve to try to improve our communities and to help grow the region, because when you think about the port overall, it is a huge economic engine. It's all about jobs. It's all about creating opportunity for people, improving the quality of life for our region. And when you think about quality of life and improving the quality of life for people in our region, it starts with a job. If you don't have a job, how can you have a great quality of life? If you don't have the economic opportunity to do better, to pay for rent or your mortgage payment or your kids' education or clothes or food, it's huge. And so we are an economic engine, and we are the stewards of that economic engine related to the port. Now, when I first started getting involved in the port, it was interesting because I always knew the port was, when you think about Houston, the port is sort of one of the legs of the three-legged stool that makes the Houston and the regional economy go. Medical center is the other leg, and oil and gas is, I think I don't need to be close to that. Oil and gas is the other leg, both upstream and downstream. We have a lot of oil and gas folks here and people who work on the port or on the channel. And so when you think about the port, it's sort of the unsung hero, if you will, to 1/3 of the whole economy in Houston. And so it is a government entity that has to focus on creating economic value and economic opportunity for everyone. Whenever I speak to folks like this, I wear this shirt. Not a coat and tie. I'm not a coat and tie CEO guy or chairman, because I want you to understand that it's about jobs. The people that wear this shirt make an average from $65,000 to $124,000 a year. And that's a living wage. We provide living wages for people. It's all about jobs and economic development. So when we're investing capital either in deepen and widen the channel, or we're investing capital in our landside improvements, or we're helping industry by virtue of improving the channel, it's about creating more jobs and more people that are wearing this shirt. And that's what I want people to think about. Everyone in this room has payroll, and when your revenue goes up, guess what? You hire more people. And your expenses are other people's revenue, and it's all about jobs, end of story, right? And so that's why I spend my time in the port, and why I spend my time trying to make sure people understand how important it is. I don't have to read numbers. You can read those numbers. One of the things that I really love talking about out, the port is number one. We're not a competitive group in here, are we? Everybody's competitive, whether it's business or sports or whatever, right? We're always competing for something. Well, the Houston port is number one, and I'm talking about the port community overall, not Port Houston. And I'm going to make that distinction. When I talk about the Houston Ship Channel, I'm talking about 200 terminals that provide jobs in the Houston area. I'm talking about the biggest energy complex, the most amazing financial and confluence of energy products, be them upstream or downstream. We have over 500 million barrels of capacity to store energy. We change the molecules all around, and we send those in and out of the world. And when you think about that, it's the most amazing complex in America, and if not the world, from an energy perspective. And that's all about being, when you're number one in all these different products. We're number one in waterborne tonnage across America for multiple years straight, which means that when you grow, if you're number one, you need to keep investing in infrastructure and investing in your business. A lot of folks wonder, so what goes in and out of the channel? When you look at this slide, for example, 70%, this is a channel now. I'm going to show you Houston Ship Channel and Port Houston. They're different things, right? Port Houston is the 8 terminals. Houston Ship Channel is everybody. So when you look at what goes in and out, it's 70% is bulk liquid, right? Which is logical, right? We have the largest chemical and energy complex in America, so you would expect that. When you look at Port Houston is 2/3 containers. Everything that you have on your table today probably came in a container, including food, tablecloths, chairs. Everything we use in our personal lives are generally come in through containers. So Port Houston is primarily containers, and then we have break bulk, which is stuff that's too big to go in a container. Lots of other products that come out that are not in containers. When you look at the ship channel and say, overall, remember, 200 terminals in the ship channel, here's where they come from and where they go. Our biggest trading partner in the channel is Latin America, and then next is Europe, East Asia, and then smaller components with the Indian subcontinent, Middle East, and other. When you look at Port Houston, it flips. So when you look at Port Houston, East Asia is the largest trading partner. And that's logical because a lot of products are made in Asia and come to the U.S. through the Panama Canal through into the Gulf. And then Europe is about the same as the channel overall. Latin America falls from number one for the channel to number 3 from Port Houston because a lot of oil and gas flows back and forth between between Latin America and Houston. When you think about what are the products that come through the channel, and this is the ship channel again, a number one coming in, a number one going out, very logical, chemical and minerals, right? You probably could ace this test given the relationship of Houston to energy. When you look at the port, it's hardware, construction materials coming in, machinery, food and drink. The food and drink one is kind of fun because when you think about it, a lot of our food is coming in through containers and through refrigerated containers and what have you. Going out, you would think is logical as well. The top two are resins and plastics and chemicals. Automotives, people always ask me, well, automotives, how are we exporting automotives? And the interesting part of that is they make Teslas in California, and they're getting ready to start making them in Austin. They put them in a container, and we send them to Europe from here. So people go, wait a minute, Houston exports Teslas? And the answer is yes, we've been exporting Teslas. It's one of our biggest automotive exports. So a lot of interesting things when you think about what goes in and out from those perspectives. When you look at the channel overall, you see the top line there. We sort of went up, we're going up, and then kind of leveled off, and we've been holding our own. And a lot of that has to do with the pandemic and the liquids around the world and what was going on with that. But generally speaking, the channel itself is on an upward trajectory for long-term growth. When you look at Port Houston, we had a dip during the pandemic a little bit, and then we've been off to the races for a long time. And that's just because of just more goods being needed for our region, the growth in the region, because our goods are being used every single day by every single person, right? And so one of the things that actually is also interesting is that we used to be really balanced between imports and exports, and now we have more imports than we have exports, primarily because of the growth in the region and people need more consumer products. And obviously the issue that we've had here in the last year or so with rising inflation, consumer spending has gone up dramatically post-pandemic, and that's logical to see more imports than exports as a result of that. When you look at some of the discussions we have a lot, people talk to us about supply chain issues all the time. There is a massive global supply chain issue. And if you think about the supply chain itself, it's like a pipeline of any kind of pipeline, oil and gas pipeline. I always talk about it a little bit, maybe less oil and gas oriented, and say it's like a fire hose or like a hose of water going through the pipeline, right? And so the first problem is you have historic demand. You need a bigger pipe to get all the products through that pipeline. And we have been underinvesting in infrastructure forever in America, and so our pipeline to get goods to our consumers is too small, and we need a bigger pipeline. We need to make more investments longer term. We have massive amounts of, and that pipeline includes distribution centers, it includes chassis, trucks, it includes rail. It's all the above on the supply chain issue. It's not just one thing. It's not ships waiting, waiting to get into port, because once they get into port and you put the products on the yard, then you have to have a truck pick them up. It has to have a chassis. It has to have a place to go. It has to be unloaded. I mean, so it's just all these different things that are happening on an ongoing basis that we're just not able to keep up with that demand. This is a busy slide, but I put it up here just because I wanted to show you some real-time stuff. So what's happening here, the number to look at on this slide, this is what we get real-time every week, and it tells us exactly what's going on in the channel, what's going on in Port Houston. But one of the numbers here that is really fascinating to me is when you look at dwell time. Dwell time means how long does that box or that product sit in our yard. And you see that dwell time historically was 7 days, and now it's 10.45 days. Historically, import dwells were 3.5 days, and now they're 6.09 days. So when you, and the other one, the bottom one there is steel. When you look at street dwell, which means just where these things, chassis, we have a longer dwell time. So what that means is that our yards are full. We're currently, I think, 93 or 4% occupancy on those or capacity, and usually we're 70 to 80. And we have to build for the future so that we don't have these dwell issues. But part of the issue with the dwell is trucks, truck drivers, chassis, and then distribution space along the way. So it's a huge issue and a huge problem, and we're making investments to try to deal with those issues. When you look at container growth, I think it's always interesting to look at the relative to other cities and other ports. And this slide shows our growth in containers are up 20+%. And you look at LA Long Beach, 1%. You look at Savannah, up 6%. So we're growing at a much faster rate. And part of it is our population. Part of it is that we're very efficient, so we get cargo through. Even with the longer dwell time, we're getting cargo through quicker than they can ever do in some of these other markets. And so we are a growth market long term because of that. And remember, growth is important because when we grow, we create more jobs. We need more people to unload. We need more trucks. We need more everything, right? And that's what we're all about. When you look at container growth comparisons, these, again, Houston's number one when you look at growth for all of these different metrics we use. Another one we use that we look at is steel. And you look at, in the steel area, when you look at our steel imports relative to others, I mean, we're number one by a massive margin of these other markets. And what that requires then is for us to think through and say, all right, we've got this massive demand, we're full, what do we do and how do we deal with those challenges? We made massive investments over the last 10 years at the port, but it hasn't been enough to meet the demand that we have today. And when you project forward and you think Houston went from, over the last, when you think about where we were in the last 20 years, went from 3 million people to 7 million people, and there's another million or 2 or 3 coming in the next few years. And so we have to think about the future and plan for the future and make sure we can be opportunistic about creating value long term for residents here, not only getting your couches and your products that you need, but making sure we have jobs and we create jobs with folks. So when you think about big growth, it creates big opportunity and big investments. Today, the port is in the process of building or spending $1.1 billion to expand our container terminals, buy new ship-to-shore cranes, and just expand the whole infrastructure on the land side of the equation. And that equation is a really big emphasis for the port. We probably have another $1 billion behind that in terms of being able to expand our facilities longer term. The great news about the port, and one of the things that excited me about being involved with it, was that it was probably the strongest financially, the strongest from a financial perspective of any port in America. And this growth has created great cash flow growth and great stewardship of that cash flow from our fellow commissioners over the years to make sure that we reinvest our cash flow. So the port today, for example, last year we made about $230 million or $40 million, something like that, in free cash flow. This year it's going to be more than that. And what we're doing is reinvesting that cash into infrastructure like this $1.1 billion. So we have the wherewithal to make those investments from our own cash flow, which is a really good thing when you think about it. Most government agencies don't have any money, and that's one of the issues that they have about not being able to pay for infrastructure is they just don't have the cash, right? Or you have to go beg the federal government to get the cash. And unfortunately, we do a lot of begging, trust me. Because you do have to negotiate, for those things. The other big project you heard about in the video is Project 11. And when you think about Project 11, Project 11 is the fastest and biggest project. I say fastest and biggest project like this in America ever. And the fastest part of it is about making sure that we get it done as fast as we possibly can. These projects generally are 15 to 20-year projects, primarily because the way they're funded and the way the permitting works. So, and I know many of you in this room know that as part of the Inflation Reduction Act and the deal that was made in the Senate was to improve the permitting process for projects like this. Our permit that we went through with the federal government to get this project done took around 5 years. And at the beginning, I remember talking to the Corps of Engineers and the port folks that were involved in this. I asked them the question, I go, so did anybody at the beginning of the project, and by the way, it cost $23 million to do the permitting and the study. And I said, did anybody believe at the beginning of this project that it wasn't needed and it wouldn't be approved? And the answer was, oh no, we all knew it was needed and be approved. It was like, well, why did it take 5 years? Because it's what government permitting projects take. You have to check a gazillion boxes and you have to do all these things. And a lot of them are important, environmental considerations and all that, which I'm full, bore. Let's make sure we do this all environmentally correct and we're pursuing clean air and all that. But it shouldn't take 5 years. It should take 2. Now that's what they're negotiating today in Congress, is to come up with permitting so that all projects, even clean energy projects, port projects, and others can be at least through a rational process. Because it takes you 5 years to get your project approved, then it takes you another 5 years to get it through Congress, then it takes another 10 years to get it funded. It's like, are you kidding me? We need this now. We don't need this 15 years from now. Now, the reason we got faster is we had local support with all of our energy folks and people that were helping us get it approved. And then the biggest reason was that the port commissioners were very aggressive, and they approved $40 million of planning and construction drawings and getting ready to have a shovel-ready deal in advance of approval. That's like building a house before you own the lot and before you have a building permit. You get it all funded and you spend all the time on the construction documents and all that. The Port Commission was aggressive, and they did it not just for Port Houston, which is benefiting because of the container terminals, but for all of the Houston Ship Channel folks. The other big piece of it, when you look at this, Project 11 is 82% funded. So what that means is, and the only reason it's 82% funded is because Port Houston is putting in $669 million that we have committed already. A federal project, the way the federal projects work, the Port Houston is required to put in, as the non-federal sponsor, 35% of the money. And the Corps of Engineers or the federal government is supposed to put in 65% of the money. And we flipped that. So we're putting in, when this is all over, the balance of this 12% we're trying to get from the federal government, which is $189 million, and then we'll be 100% funded. And so if the federal government puts in the $189 million, we will be then at a point where we have funded 70% versus 35%. And that's the only way we could get this job done as fast as we could, because we knew we needed it. The port had the funds to do it, so we went ahead and spent the money on the front end to do it, and then financed our business in a way where we could fund that $669 million. Now, that doesn't mean that industry is going to get let off their commitment to pay 50% of the port's fee or cost in this project. Industry has put forth a proposal that once the project is done, we'll use a federal process where somehow we will recoup some of those funds through fees or some sort of user pay scenario that creates a situation where we can recoup some of our money so we can then work on Project 12. And we have already started working on Project 12 because ultimately we know it needs to actually be much deeper now than it does wider, because the depth, when you think about depth, what that does is it creates, you can put more products in a ship because they sink more, right? Because you have more weight. And so ultimately we know we have to continue to invest in the channel and continue to create value for everybody in the ship channel. So more to come on that. We're not going to create a fight today and say who's going to pay what or how much, but trust me, it's coming. All right, so the schedule, we're going to be complete with the Bayport part of the Bay Reach part of the schedule by the end of 2024, and then hopefully the whole project will be done by the end of 2025, early 2026. And in a normal federally funded process, we're talking 2034, 2036 best case, or a 34, 36 best case, right? So we have really accelerated this project through our own capital, through our partners in industry helping us, with the approval process and all that. So it's been truly a public and a private-public partnership with industry, and I really appreciate and thank all of our industry partners who helped us do that. Now, we do need $189 million more, and that's going into the 2024 Biden budget, so we're going to have to make sure that all of our political friends and folks understand that, and we need to push hard to get that additional $189 million so we can actually finish the channel ultimately. Dredging is currently underway. We've approved roughly $500 million of contracts, I think, already, and dredging is happening right now in the Bay Reach part of the channel. So Project 11 is huge, and the ship channel itself is a massive economic engine, but the people in the communities that surround the ship channel are bearing the brunt of what it is, right? Lots of ships, lots of noise, some pollution, issues, right? So one of the, I think, really important parts of the port is to make sure that we are good stewards to the community. So we are creating a lot of value in the community through lots of different programs. We have a community grant program each year where people in the community come in, and we want grants to be focused on education, community development, and things to help the communities that are in and around the port. We have a $2 million green program, which are parks. So building new parks and creating new parks. We just donated land to the city of Houston right by the turning basin that is going to be part of Hidalgo Park. And so we're doing parks in Pasadena and Channelview. And so we are taking some of that capital that we are creating or some of the cash flow that we're earning through the operations of the port, and we're reinvesting it back into the community through educational programs, green programs, pollution reduction programs, and things like that. And I think it's really important we have a commitment to the community to make sure we're good stewards of the community as well. And I know that everyone that operates in the channel has different community support programs, and I just thank them for everything they're doing, because it takes a village. It's not just what the port does, it's those other 200 terminals, and we know we get a lot of support from those folks as well. The environment is a big issue, right? When you think about clean air in the channel, it's huge. Port Houston's committed to being carbon neutral by 2050. We're implementing lots and lots of different programs, from 100% asset-backed solar electricity to diesel hybrid engines, cutting NOx from our existing RTGs. We're focused on making sure that we are good stewards, and health of people in and around the channel is absolutely critical. We have cleaned the channel up dramatically over the years. Our air quality is much better than it has been over the last 5 or 10 years, and it's all good. But we need to continue to put our shoulders to the wheel on this and do it and make sure that as a community, we're focused on the environment. So I'm going to wrap up this part now and just say, and I think there's a Q&A that we can do with like online thing or something. So I'm good to do that now if you want to do Q&A. So thank you for all your support of the port. Appreciate everything you do. Make sure if you know a congressman or somebody in Congress, you tell them we need $189 million still to finish the channel, and the port is putting in a huge amount that the federal government should have done. But with that said, we will start Q&A if you want. Can I read that? With growth, have you seen an increase in security issues, and what steps have you done to ensure they can handle demand without compromising safety and security? Okay, so safety and security issues, absolutely paramount. Some of the investments we made along with customs. So if you think about the port, if something comes to the port in a container, which a lot of things do, obviously, that container has to go through, if it came from pretty much anywhere, it has to go through the same security out as you do through the airport. So think of your luggage and how you walk through the magnetometers, and boxes go through that in a truck when they go out. So we have not had to compromise security. We will not compromise security at the port, no matter how fast or how much growth we have. Next one is, what can we do to shore up supply chain delays? Wow, that's a tough one, because the challenge with it's not just one thing, it's everything, right? It's investments in in roadways and trucks, and so it is a real challenge. And I think what we need to do there is we need to make sure that it's an all of the above strategy, that when we're thinking about new roadways or expanding roads or changing roads and things like that, since 98% of the container business comes on trucks, and one of the reasons that our business is so good, and our container business is so good, is because it's easy to put a container on a truck and take it to Dallas or take it to Chicago. And right now there are rail jams, and last week there was a potential rail strike, and so a lot of cargo was coming to us because of that. So we just have to be vigilant and making sure that everyone that's involved in the chain, whether it's transportation folks or trucking or other folks that have infrastructure investments, that we are getting everything we need to expand our supply chain, because that's really the issue when you get down to it. What is the average wait for ships before they enter the Houston Ship Channel? So our average, lately we've had anywhere from 20 to 30 ships waiting, and it's taken them anywhere from 3 to 5 days to make it in. And it really depends on weather, and it also depends on labor availability. We have opened our container terminals on Saturdays, and for those of you who haven't done a Saturday deal, we need you to come. Part of the challenge when you think about supply chain is, when you're doing really well and you're working 80, or 60 hours a week as a trucker, Saturday you want to go play golf or hang with your grandkids, right? Well, unfortunately, that we have this issue where we need more hours, and we need more people to work in those hours. So we either need to recruit more folks to do that, or somehow change the system so people so we can open those gates longer and make sure they come. Because right now I don't think we're perfect in our Saturday because of golf and grandkids at this point. Let's see. What are the main contributors to your carbon footprint that you expect to change by 2050? That's a good one. Well, so all of our ship-to-shore cranes are electric, and we are already big time into renewable electricity. So when you look at our RTGs, which are rubber tire gantry cranes that move the box once it comes off the ship, and then they move it around the yard, and then it gets put on a truck. So that the RTGs are diesel. And so we're getting ready to buy a bunch of hybrid diesels, which lowers NOx big time. These are Tier 4 diesel engines. And so RTGs are a big area where we can lower our carbon footprint by investing in new, cleaner RTGs. And then the other part of the equation, when you think about it, is trucks. Ultimately, we have anywhere from 9,000 to 10,000 trucks that come and pick up stuff and leave stuff off every day, and those trucks need to be converted ultimately into cleaner trucks. We are going to also have dockside or wharfside systems that when the ship is idling or sitting there getting unloaded, that we're capturing those. So those are really the really low-hanging fruit long-term or over a period of time are these RTGs, the ship-to-shore stuff, and then trucks. Now, the problem fundamentally with all that is that it's expensive. And if you have an RTG or a truck that lasts 15 years and you just bought it, then it's really expensive to convert that to hydrogen or convert it to natural gas or electric. And so the real big issue is money. How do you pay for it all? And as Kermit the Frog said, it's really tough to be green, and it's very expensive to be green. And so the question is, where's that? I want to be green cost, structure work, and hopefully the Inflation Reduction Act does a lot of really good things on the carrot side of the equation, like tax credits and things like that, and we're going to take advantage of a lot of that, but it is a constant battle on the cost-effective issue on being green. So let's see, how does Port Houston compare to LA? Oh, we're much better. We're bigger, we're better. Don't get me started on LA, okay? Now, LA has their own benefits and what have you, but the great thing about Houston is is we have great labor relationships with the ILA. They're in the current discussions with their labor contract on the West Coast, and that's hopefully going to work out for them. But we've had labor peace here since 1985 or 83 or something like that. And so Houston is just a easier place to do business, a better place to create value for our workers and our families. California just has so many complicated issues and rules, and it doesn't make them better, it just makes it harder, and it makes things more expensive there. You know, if you think about the average price of a house in Houston, it's 2x in California. And it's the same house, by the way. The wood's the same, the shingles are the same, the products inside are the same, but it's double. And the reason it's double is because they make you jump through hoops, and it's a lot of regulatory construct, and which puts cost on everything. And so I would say, you know, we love being from Texas. We love being at Port Houston. It's hard to compare these ports, but I think are pro-business, we're pro-employees, we're pro-environment, but we're not going to create rules that actually make it harder to do those things, which is what California does, unfortunately. And I operate my paid, the actual job that I get paid at. I operate in Southern California, and we have a whole set of manuals for employees and business rules and things in California than we do for the rest of the country. And we operate in 10 states and District of Columbia, and it's the hardest, most complicated place to work in America. And unfortunately, that cost of those rules and regs translate where everything's more expensive there. You know, and when you're working at a job trying to make ends meet, and you're a dock worker making $70,000, $80,000 a year in Houston, you can afford a house, not in LA. And so I think that makes us a lot more competitive long term and just better overall. So with that, I think we're out of questions and time. So thank you, Chad. Great job. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
No problem. Absolutely.